Hello everyone, today we're going to be looking at Module 1 of the math test in the English GAT exam book. Alright, so let's get started. So now we have this example where we have 3 to the power of 10 plus 3 to the power of 10 plus 3 to the power of 10. What is that going to equal? So your first instinct might be to add them or add the exponents or something, but in reality, this is a kind of a trick question because you can see this question in a different way, which will help you get closer to the answer. So what am I trying to say by that? So we know a rule that if you multiply two numbers, a, b, right, to the power of a to the power of a, what you can do is multiply those two numbers but add the exponents, right? So we want to get this question in this format in order to add the exponents. You can check the rules book, and the rules, what they help you do is just have a goal. Your goal should be to get any question into the format where you can solve it most easily. So in this case, we would turn this to 3 to the power of 10 by 3, because if you think about it, a number plus number plus a number is just that number multiplied by 3. It's the same thing. They're equal. So in that case, we have 3 to the power of 10 multiplied by 3 to the power multiplied by 3, but of course there's a 1 over here. So you don't, I think I made a mistake by saying you multiply. Well, you don't multiply the numbers. You just write the number itself with the new exponent, because you just add the exponents together. And that will be your answer, D. Next question, we have compare the value of A with the value of B. Of course, the answer choices are A is bigger or B is bigger, or they're equal or not enough information. So let's see. Well, in this scenario, you have gigantic numbers, right? And you're multiplying all together. If you're really good at multiplication, you can probably just come up with an answer for each of them. But if you're like me, we're not really that good with multiplication. So what we're going to do is simplify. What I mean by that is, for example, let's start with B. All right, what is B going to equal to? So we have 27. What is 27? 27 is 3 by 9, right? What is 9? It is 3 by 3. And then take those numbers. Keep those numbers in mind. And let's keep doing that for each single number until we have something, We have something to go by, which I will show you. All right, 14. What is 14? Well, 14 is 2 by 7, right? And I don't think we can go further than here because 7 is just 7 by 1, and 2, 2 is as small as it can get. All right, let's keep going. 12. We have 6 and 2, right? And 6 is just 3 by 2. And those are our numbers, as well as this too. All right, now let's do the same thing to the side of A. Now this looks like it takes a long time, but in reality, with practice, you can just think about it and then just start writing. Let's see, 81. We have 81. What is 81? Well, 81 is 9 by 9. 9 by 9, that's just 3 by 3 and 3 by 3, right? So those are our numbers right here. You have 8. What is 8? 8 is 4 by 2, and 4 is 2 by 2, and we get faster now because, you start dealing with easier numbers. Then you have 7, which is just, 7. So then what you do in this case, right, these numbers, you can just, think about it like, what if you add all of them and then subtract them from each other, right? This is the way you should be kind of thinking about it. So let's do something a bit different. Instead of adding them all up together and then finding, subtracting them and going through all of that, let's just start taking them out one by one. So let's make a barrier over here. So if I take a number from this side, I'm going to take a number from this side. So let me show you. So 3, 3, another 3, another 3. Took a 3, took a 3, I took a 3, and you keep going. 2, 2, 2, 2, and 2, 2. And as you guys can see, we're left with a 7 and a 7. So actually, A is equal to B. And in that case, the answer would be C.
Alright, so let's keep moving. We have number 3, we have, the value of 120 minus 64 divided by 8 multiplied by 4. So this is as easy as it gets, right? It looks like straight up, multiplication, division. PEMDAS is the name of the game, but there's a trick which you guys are gonna see in a second. So let's start. Alright, PEMDAS. So we don't have parentheses, we don't have exponents, we have multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. Let's try it out. Well, we don't have addition, but that's okay. 8 by 4, that is 32. 32. Divided by 64. Right, that's gonna be 2. It's gonna be 2. And then 120 minus 2, that's just 118. However, that is not the answer. You go from left to right. Even though PEMDAS has multiplication for division, you go from left to right. So if you chose 118, you would be wrong. So then how do we go on about doing this, right? Let's just write the equation again, and let's go this time from left to right. Let's go in this way. Of course, starting with division because PEMDAS. So 64 divided by 8, that's gonna be 8. And 8 by 4, that's again gonna be 32. And then you take 120 from 32, or 32 from 120. And you're gonna end up with 88. A very unexpected answer. A lot of people get this wrong. It's just because PEMDAS not necessarily just means multiplication before division. It actually depends. You must go from left to right. And so the right answer is C. Alright, so I'm gonna take this away for now. I'm gonna talk about it in a bit. So for question 4, we have 1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 up until 100. And if you're gonna just sit there and try and do it, it's gonna take you a really long time. So instead, there are actually 2 ways of solving this problem. So there's my way and there's the real way. My way is to just memorize it. This question is such a common question in the GAT. I took the test a couple of times, and each time this question existed, either in this form or in a different form. It was like instead of 100, it's 200. 1 plus 2 plus 3 up until 200. So how do you find the answer? In my way, you memorize it. So I memorized that from 1 till 100, it is 5,050. It is 50-50. That's just, and so if it's up until 200, I'll just multiply that by 2 and I'll get the answer. But the real way is by knowing the arithmetic sequence. The arithmetic, this is a formula to find, the number in an arithmetic sequence. This is called an arithmetic sequence. But this is a formula to find the final number if you're adding, parts of the arithmetic sequence. So what is that going to look like for this equation? So we're going to put 100 and multiply it by 100 plus 1. over 2. So n is the first number, is the last number. N is always the last number. You just plug that in and you'll get the answer. So let's see. What is 100 multiplied by 101? It is as simple as it gets. 10,100. And over 2, so it's just over 2. And if you're not really familiar with this, I mean, 100 by 100 is 10,000. 100 by 10 is, 100 by 100 is 10,000. And so 100 multiplied by 101, you'll just have to add, the rest of it. So instead of this being all zeros, there will have to be a 1 here. So, that's just a way of thinking about it. But you can just do it in normal multiplication, as a normal multiplication. And then you'll get here 5,050. And that is the correct way to solve it. But just remember that it's 5,050. And remember this sequence for if the format changed of this question. Alright, let's look at number 5. We have x over y. So this is what the question actually looks like. We have x over y is equals to 7. And then we have x plus 3y over 2y is equals to question mark. Find the answer. It's one of those. So now there is a straightforward way of doing this, but there's another way which I seem to prefer, making sense out of the question. So x over y is equals to 7. So there are two numbers that are not the same, because this is x and this is y. They're not the same number. That will give me 7. What could that be? It's either going to be 7 over 1, right? Or it's going to be 14 over 2. It's not going to be some crazy number that you cannot multiply and use here, because the exam is not trying to make you fail. But so that just makes sense. So let's try it out. 7 and 1. Let's try them out. So x in this scenario would be 7, and y would be 1. So multiplied by 2. So let's see what that looks like. So 7 plus 3 by 1 is just 3. And then over 2. That's equals to 10 over 2, which is equals to 5. And lo and behold, the answer is 5. Let's try 14 and 2. Let's see, what we could get if someone decided to try that first. So 14 plus 6, it's going to equal to 2 multiplied by 2. So that's just 20 over 4, which, guess what? It is also 5. So in whatever scenario you would choose, in whatever circumstance you would put yourself in, you will find the same answer, as long as it's logical.
Now, question 6 asks how many even integers are between 12 over 5 and 56 over 5. Now, I'm just going to mention that the question should be, it should mention estimation somewhere here, because unless you know exactly what 12 over 5, what is exactly between 56 over 5 and 12 over 5 is, your answer will be an estimation. But an estimation is not necessarily incorrect, because, for example, if I ask you what is between 1 and 3, how many numbers are between 1 and 3? Not exactly what is, but how many numbers. So that's kind of the key, how many. So you're going to tell me, one number is between them, which is 2. So, okay, now let's say you didn't know what is between 1 and 3. So instead you take what's between 2 and 4. That estimation will still give you the same answer because there's only one number between them. So that's what we're going to try and do over here. So let's estimate 12 over 5. It looks, it's really close to 12 over 6, which is 2. And in this scenario here, 56 over 5, that is really close to 55 over 5. Now, that's an important point to mention. You don't have to, you don't need to have the same, if you're going to change the denominator here, you don't have to change the denominator there. Those are two separate numbers. Just estimate them up to like the same estimation. Here we have, we didn't change the whole thing. We didn't turn it into like 100 or something like that, as close as possible, right? We added a number here, right? We made this 12 over 5, so we made it 12 over 6, and we just removed the number here, one number. So it became 55 over 5. So yeah, which will give us 11. So now we have 2 and 11. So how many even integers? And by the way, even integers just means integer just means number. It's just a different wording for it. So integer is number. All right. Now let's see how many even numbers are between 2 and 11. You don't count 2 and you don't count 2. So you keep going. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So let's see. We have 4. That's an even integer. 4 is an even number. 6 is an even number. 8 and 10. So that's 4 even integers between those two numbers. All right. The next question asks, the measure of the exterior angle of an equilateral triangle is what? Well, so you can get the answer to this question almost instantaneously, because you don't even need to do, you don't need to draw the triangle to figure it out, but I'm just going to draw it for clarification. All right. So now we have this equilateral triangle, and this is the exterior angle. This is the exterior angle. Now an equilateral triangle, the reason why they didn't draw a triangle, they didn't give you anything, because an equilateral triangle is a very famous triangle. It's a triangle that has equal angles everywhere. They are all 60, all the angles inside of it. And how do you find an exterior angle? You add two opposite angles from inside of a triangle. You add, for example, these two or these two. So whichever ones you add, you're still going to end up with the same answer, which is 120. And that's the measure of the exterior angle. All right, now question 8 asks, if 6 of a number is 25% of 12, what is that number? Well, in these questions, when there is more than one question, so you have to find 6 of a number which is 25% of 12, you need to know where to start. So in this case, you start here, 25% of 12, because you can find that easily. How? Well, okay, if you don't know how to find it, you just, what's 50% of 12? What is half of 12? So what's half of 12? That's just 6. Everyone knows that. So everyone knows that. So 25%, that's just 6, half of 6. 25% of 12 is just half of 12, which is going to be 3. 6 over 2, that's just 3. So 3 is 25% of 12. And now we have a number, 3. So they said if 6 of a number is 25%. So 6th of a number, so of x, is equals to 3. That is the scenario we have here. So what do you do in that case? You divide both sides by 1 over 6. And then to find 3 over 1 over 6, what you can do is flip these two, the numerator and the denominator of the bottom fraction. So and then you can multiply it. So that will be 3 by 6, which will give you 18. So x, So if we go back to our original equation, it's not going to look like this anymore. It's going to look like that, which is equals to 18. So I'm just going to remove this whole part. So x is equals to 18. So our final answer is going to be 18.
Question 9 asks, if the mean of the marks of 5 students is 20, then the sum of their marks is what? Okay, so it's asking for the mean. And mean just means the average. Mean means average. And average just directly translates to add the numbers and divide them over how many numbers. So 1, 2, 3 numbers, then you're gonna just divide them by 3. So that's what a mean is. So he's saying the mean of the marks of 5 students is 20. So taken by this, so x plus x, 5 students, which you can write this in a simpler way by just saying 5x over 5 students, it's going to give us 20. This is exactly what this statement means. So then he's saying, so they're not asking for that, they're asking for the sum of their marks. Sum of their marks, that's just 5x. So they're looking for 5x. So the way to find 5x, multiply 5 by 20 over here. So you're going to get 5x is equals to 5 by 20, which is 100. And that's your answer. That's your answer right here. Now, question 10 asks, if the volume of a cube is 64 centimeters, then the length of the diagonal of one face is what? So, what's the volume of a cube? That's the first thing you think about. Volume of cube. The volume of a cube is just the volume of any shape. It's just the area of one side of that shape, the base side of that shape, multiplied by the height. Cubes are just a bunch of squares, exactly 6 squares above each other. It goes like that. I don't know how to draw, and it like goes, it forms a cube. Forms a cube. So since there are a bunch of squares, the height is equal to just one side. So the area of a normal square, okay, that's not a normal square. The area of a normal square, there you go. The area of a normal square just means you multiply the side lengths, s squared. So we have s multiplied by s, and then you also the height, because the height is just, still one side. So that's just s cubed. That's what the volume of a s cubed, that's what the volume of a cube is. So now we know that s cubed is just 64. And they're asking us for the diagonal of one face. The diagonal of one face. So you have a square like that. The diagonal, and let's say this is 2. The diagonal, the side length is 2. So if we say the side length right here is 2, the diagonal is just going to be 2 root 2. That's just the rule of a diagonal. So first of all, let's find s, so that we can just put a root 2 next to it and go home. So s is just, you take this cube over here, is the cube root of 64. The cubic root of 64 is equals to 4. That's the cubic root of 64. 4 by 4 by 4 is equals to 64. So then to find the length of the diagonal of one face, which is this face, we just put a root 2 right here. Because if this was 4, the diagonal would just be 4 root 2. The proof of this is that you don't treat the diagonal as a square. So you treat this as two triangles that look like this. That's the key of it. It's actually just two triangles. And when you use the Pythagorean theorem, this side of those two triangles, these two sides, they are always the base, or the adjacent side, or the opposite side by root 2. So it's always a side root 2. So that's why it makes sense for root 2. And that would be your answer. If you already knew how a diagonal face worked, you could, in theory, just answer this question instantly, because this is the only question where the root 2 is. This is the only question, this is the only choice that looks like that for root 2. So you should have just gotten it instantly. So question 11 says, if the age of Ayman 5 years ago was X years, then his age now is what? Okay. So this is just a logical question. There are no equations, no formulas. I would advise giving a year to those questions, although with practice you're going to be able to do them almost instantly. So let's say right now it's 2020. So the age of Ayman 5 years ago was in 2015. It was X, right? The age of Ayman 5 years ago was X years. So then in 2020 his age would be, this is just plus 5. That's why we have 2020. So it's just going to be X plus 5. And that's going to be your answer. Alright, so question 12 is saying the sum of these angles is what? So the sum of the angles, which is interesting because it doesn't specify which angles, but it just means those two angles. So X plus Y is what? I was a bit confused at the beginning, but now I understood. So X plus Y is what? We know there's a rule about it, and then there's common sense. So the rule about it says, okay, we know that this is 130. The number ahead of it is always going to just be 130. This is the cross angle rule. So now you just have to find the other two. And finding the other two is actually simple, because this shape, right? It's an X, and an X, if you rotate it a little bit to that side, it's gonna look like this. Look at that. It's gonna look like a cross. And if you have a cross, you have, and we know that there's 130 on this side, and we know that there's 130 on this side, then it's that simple. We know that this angle, if you have an angle like that, this angle is just going to be 180, because it's a flat line. The angle of just a flat line, that's 180. So what's missing here? So you just take 180 minus 130, and you're going to get this right here. And this right here is going to be 50. And the same would be on the other side. And it's that simple. And now you take 50 and add it to 50, and that's just 100. 50 plus 50 is 100. And now you have your answer, B.